We're going to be speaking to Conshizzy. He's a highly acclaimed human rights lawyer. In 2017, he won a Yali Human Rights Champion Award, and he devotes much of his time of his work in legal writing, research, public speaking, supporting groups, individuals and organizations engaged in movement building to end human rights violations and social justice. I'm so excited to have this conversation. He's coming all the way from really knowing Wagwan on the ground. So we would very much like to welcome Conshizzy to the show.
Yeah, good afternoon, Chiki and DJ Heno.
Before we start, Conshizzy, let's just go straight into it, because we were talking about you on the show the other day. Heno was really in his feelings because you sent me the flyer of an African Child Day and you didn't send it to Heno, and he felt sad.
We might like to know his mood this afternoon with our conversation. Yeah.
No, he wasn't in a good mood with you for a while. I mean, I'll let you guys sort that out off
That's
air.
a response?
I'll let you sort it out off air. Y'all can have your,
That's a response?
Yes, Heno.
You can always resolve Heno, you know.
You see?
It's cool. Imaneno tamaliza off air vile Chiki amesema.
Yeah,
No
exactly.
problem.
Y'all sort that out. Do like a arm wrestle or something. It'll be over. Conshizzy, welcome to the show. I'm really excited to have this conversation because I think, yeah, really excited. And I think it's something that's really not spoken about. So what I'm asking is for as much honesty, as much realness as possible, because we need to speak on behalf of especially the youths out there that don't necessarily have a mouthpiece on a forum like this. So we're speaking about race, we're speaking about tribe, we're speaking about privilege. When it comes to human rights violations, and you work on a lot of them, and you've done a lot of research, how much do you think privilege bleeds into that? How likely is it that you just have a basic rule of law and it applies equally to everyone? Or is it more likely to be the case that the higher you up on the social economic ladder, the more likely it is for you to be able to get off with either a lighter penalty or no penalty at all?
All right. Let me start by commending you guys, for pushing the envelope. This is a very bold and brave conversation you guys are having. And I guess we needed this conversation. It was a much needed conversation. So I want to commend you guys for pushing that envelope.
Thank you.
And let me just take it back a while. We from the BLM movement that sparked the whole conversation. Right now, it's a very exciting time we're living in. We are witnessing the unique union of powerful democratic awakening focused on the poor and the vulnerable in society, because it's capturing the imagined spirits of our age right now. Because for too long, there has been no mass protest, a unified protest against multi-level assaults on minorities and black people, vulnerable people in society. So let me say the people is slowly but surely coming to an end. And this is the time to have this conversation. And like you mentioned, the situation is not unique here in Kenya. As compared to the rest of the world. We all have discrimination, we all have violations all over the world. But what is happening right now is citizens are realizing the iron cage they inhabit may be a golden cage for the privileged. It's still a form of bondage. And it's not a unique situation to just an individual. We are all concerned, and it affects everyone. So it's a grand wake-up call in the midst of a long slumber in indifference to the vulnerable. That said, in our Kenyan constitution, we have laws, that tackle discrimination. And when it comes to people being discriminated, let me just touch on what's discrimination, or maybe for guys maybe to understand.
Sure.
According of difference, maybe treatment of person attributable wholly to the descriptions and maybe how they look, how the social class, and Article, in the Constitution again, since it's the supreme land of the law, the supreme law of the land, Article 27 states that the state shall not discriminate directly or indirectly on sex, on race, on marital status, on anything. So the law is aware of these things, but they still happen. So the reason, I guess, we are faced with this situation is because we have a caste system. And when I say that, I mean we have indifferences that promote a superficial ethic of success. If you have money, if you're famous, you belong to a certain class, or maybe you're affiliated to a political party, maybe leave too many people well adjusted to injustice. So I guess what we're having is a systematic breakdown, and that's why the vulnerable communities are devastated by mass unemployment, social neglect, economic abandonment and all that, and even police brutality. So we have, but there's hope. Let me say we have crossed the Rubicon, and there's no return to sleepwalking, because right now guys are being vocal about these things, and we're seeing every day people coming up and saying you're tired of these discrimination and all these atrocities. So I might say we are on the right track right now. It's an exciting time to be alive, honestly. Yeah. So let me just touch a bit on when it comes to tribalism and this thing. When here, because in Kenya it's an ugly thing, We've been having it for a while, and I guess the major stumbling block to the tribalism has brought to Kenya is, of course, social economic development. State opportunities maybe trickle down to tribesmen, and everything takes a tribal angle. But that said, too, we have courts of law. We have laws that don't condone this, and every time these things come up, people are always saying, the courts don't give us fair trial. We go to court, but maybe discrimination and all that kind of stuff happens in court. But we also have a whole article talking about fair trial, and that's Article 50 of the Constitution. And every accused person has the right to fair trial. And in 2016, we had a very major win when it comes to fair trial, because we enacted the Contempt of Court Act in 2016. It's a progressive act that steps towards mitigating previous shortfalls in legislative intervention on matters of contempt of court. So I must say we have shortcomings, but with such progressive laws like the Contempt of Court Act, because the court can use the authority of the act to give greater effect to the right of fair trial, without taking so much concern on public opinion, influence, and all that, and media, also the media, media commentary.
Yeah, I mean that.
So,
you see that all over the world as well. That there's court of public opinion, and then there's the official court, right? And the court of public opinion often, unfortunately, has a big impact on what ends up being the result of so-called fair trials. I wanted to ask, we have globally, like you rightly said, what seems to be a pushback right now. And I was speaking to my mum just yesterday, who's also a lawyer, and she was saying the biggest concern is in the Western world is if you're a wealthy white male, you probably feel quite attacked right now. So what's very likely is from a social economic perspective, from a financial perspective, you're going to stand together right now and try and prevent what is the rewriting or the movement towards equality of people. And you have the resources to do it. You have the funds to do it. And you have the support of your very limited network. But that limited network is the financial breadwinner at the moment of everything else. Because if we're talking about equality, it necessarily means there are some people who are going to be pushed out for some other people to come in. When you look at Kenya, obviously we're not talking about overwhelmingly a black and white issue. We're speaking about a tribe issue. We're speaking about a nepotism issue. What is the pushback going to be like? If you see someone from Kibra, someone from Mathare, someone from Kariobangi, who's very, very talented, how likely is Mr. X to give that person a position rather than the nephew who's less talented but their nephew?
Good question, Chiki. Like I said earlier in my, when I mentioned in the beginning, we have a class caste system in Kenya, and we must dismantle this system because, like I said, we tend to maybe favor people according to the class they belong to or how maybe wealthy they are or affluent. Because, like I was telling my friend on the day, money has become the new race. Money has become the new tribe, all over the world. And that because if you don't have that opportunity, you can't find your way. But that said, I think what maybe we should do as a nation maybe is share our resources under a constitutional agreement. That's what I think. Ensure that no skewed distribution of resources and jobs and all this. If you have a rotation and accommodate everyone, I think we can maybe make a step forward. I call it meritocracy. Giving people jobs on merit, not because they belong to a certain tribe or maybe they belong to a certain social class. So if you can embrace meritocracy in civil society, in private sector, in corporate, I think we can make a big step towards isolating, the vulnerable in society.
No, I agree with you 100%. I'm just questioning the plausibility, because if you have a huge company where most people are cousins, family, friends, where is even the advantage for them to say, one second, you've hired me, when there is someone from the hood who's probably significantly more qualified than I am? Like, as citizens, as people who are tuned in, what can we do to really push that envelope to ensure that meritocracies do happen at workplaces? I understand that you've spoken about discrimination laws. Is there a thing like in the UK, for example, when you go for an interview and you feel as if you had been discriminated against from the point of interview, you can have a legal proceedings from that point. You can say, I feel from that point that I was discriminated against, and it's upon the interviewer to then provide the evidence of everyone that they interviewed and a good explanation as to why the person who they eventually hired was more appropriate for the role than you were. Is there anything like that in Kenya?
Yeah. We have a law that touches on that. We have a law called the Employment Act that promotes equality and in recruitment, in training, in workplaces. And let me just touch on Section 5 because maybe that's more relevant right now. Preferring a person on the basis of an inherent requirement of a job is not discrimination, because people should also know a thin line between maybe being discriminated and maybe not meeting the requirements to, for a job. So Section 5 is an exception to that. Maybe a person is preferred for the job because on the basis of an inherent requirement of that job. But that said, the Employment Act also covers people who maybe are discriminated. And we have labor codes that people can seek redress when it comes to discrimination, when it comes to hiring and training and maybe recruitment. And also Section 5, just down, maybe let me just mention that. There's if the company feels the company can take affirmative action, and with measures consistent with the promotion of equality and the elimination of discrimination. They might fire because of misconduct, maybe they might think maybe don't represent or the values of the company. That's not discrimination. So sometimes there's a thin line between being discriminated and maybe the company upholding its values of the company. But let's say we have an entire act, let's say the Employment Act, that covers that. And if any party feels aggrieved, maybe you feel like you're discriminated when the job recruitment was happening, you can move to court, and challenge that. But at the end of the day, I guess what we need to maybe focus on, like I say, is to have a more structured way in our laws that we share our resources, because there's so many tribes in Kenya, and if we don't have a structure in the constitution, like clear structure, not just because someone in a place, maybe in a certain place in Kenya, might not have maybe the privilege to maybe go to school and attain a certain level of education. So that person is educated, but they don't have that level of education. So they might be told you're marginalized or you didn't get the job because maybe you were not qualified. But that's not their fault. It's because they're marginalized and maybe they couldn't go to school, get to school. Maybe they didn't have means to go to school. Maybe the situation where the lives was not conducive to learn. So we need to, like I said, I guess the bottom line should be to have a structure in our laws that we can share these resources and ensure that even the marginalized people get an opportunity and they're not put on a pedestal like me and yourself and Heno because maybe that guy had a better education than them. So I guess if you have a structure to accommodate everyone, you can move you can make steps. Yeah.
You're right. I'm going to pass you over to Heno, because I think we could really discuss the intricacies of these things for a long time, because what you're saying is right. It ends up being a conversation of privilege, because if you've come from a wealthy family and you go to the best schools, then even the best employment law, if what we're doing is saying, are you more educated? Well, the likelihood is someone who's wealthy is going to be more educated and therefore will still continue to get the job. So I think that's a fair point. Heno, jump in.
Yes. Sasa Conshizzy, before we finish up, I have niko na swali mbili manze. Do you think Kenyans not having these conversations about race, tribe and privilege is the problem? You know, like, do you think that hiyo ndo shida yetu kama wa Kenya? Then swali ya pili, what solutions as citizens, as individuals, you know, can we come up with? Because, you know, we talk about the law of the constitution to protect and all that, but deep down, in a narrow down to us as individuals to check how to communicate, to have these conversations, to talk about them. So those are my two questions before tumaliza. Unadhani ya kwamba sisi not having these conversations is the problem, and as citizens, as individuals, what can we do? Because my laws imeandikwa constitution, but what do I follow?
Or do they even know them?
Under watu wengine wajui.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. That's a very good question, by the way. Let me just say, like I said, it's not unique to Kenya. Like it's happening globally, and I mentioned earlier, you know, citizens, even global citizens around the world, have realized now the iron cage, maybe they have maybe a golden cage, depending on how affluent you are. It's still a form of bondage. So, going back to your question, Heno, us not talking about it, of course, can't bring about change. Even laws and policies are invoked by conversations like this. Someone might be listening right now. They make laws. You know, they decide, they're policymakers, and they might decide to incorporate it. So, this conversation, like I said, it's a very progressive conversation. It's a thought-provoking conversation, and us talking the beginning of change. And that said, if we stand inside of our own conceptual team and maybe try in our own class, you know, caste, we are blind to the possibilities of other ways of thinking, you know, seeing and understanding, interpreting the world and the society differently. So I think if we interchange or maybe interface our opinions, our ideas, our cultures, our practices, we can be able now to solve this issue, because if we stay like I said, in a caste system, we won't be able to know what can the X offer, what can Y offer, you know. So I think, let me just quote my good friend, his name is Bobby Kangi, he's a legal scholar. We were having a conversation the other day, and he said we must transform our thinking about and around how we interface. So I think we need to interface, we need to merge our morals, merge our aspirations, our ideas, and see how we can incorporate everyone. Because, like I said, someone might not be that privileged, but they have something they can offer or bring to the table. So interfacing and our ethnic unions and our ideas and our morals could be a major step towards maybe having a better society.
Okay, no, I hear you, but I think there's still the question is how. Because in an ideal world, of course, everyone will kind of band together and talk from one brush. But I think where it becomes problematic is the will amongst the minority is not going to be for change because they're the benefactors right now, right? So the will has to be the will has to be the masses, the majority, right? Yeah. So it has to be what can, like what Heno was saying, what can the majority do to ensure that change, that shift starts to happen, when in some cases they're uneducated, when in some cases they're just worried about basic needs. Can I eat today? Can I drink today? Can I pay my rent today? Do I really have time to start petitioning government to change equality-based systems? Yeah.
I think the privileged people in society, I know they're listening right now, and if we decide to speak for the vulnerable, I guess that's also a major step, because like the other day I was thinking, if you have your fridge stocked up, and maybe your only worry is about maybe inconsistent internet or missing a holiday because there's a cessation of movement. You're privileged,
Sure.
If someone can't go to the salon because the salon is not an essential service, that's privilege. So I think Kenyans shouldn't think that privilege is just being rich and being wealthy, like
that's
I mentioned.
a very good point.
If your worry right now is my internet is down.
Your
I can't
nails,
watch
yeah.
Your nails, that kind of stuff. That's privilege, So I think if we start speaking out as privileged people, and like I said, privilege is not just being wealthy and being on, on multi-million maybe magazines saying how much you think, talking about your net worth. That's not it. It's just having these things that most people can't even, afford, or maybe these things that maybe we might overlook, But I think we should speak, and also, like I say, inter-ethnic union. Like I say, our ideas, not just intermarrying, our ideas or morals, our aspirations. We need to interface all these things.
Yeah.
And once we do that, we will see someone has come from a different tribe or from a different race. We just see ourselves as human,
Yeah, for real. Actually,
so
we have there's the way the legal framework works in Nigeria is you can't have a leader from one tribe twice. So if we've had a Yoruba leader, exactly, it has to go in circles, which forces you after a while to no longer see your leader from a tribal perspective. And that was after the Biafran War, because obviously, of course, we've had our own issues and continue to have our own issues with tribe. But I definitely think when it comes to leadership, you're likely to see people really voting for leaders that they believe in, because tribe is off the table. I mean, your tribe might not get another foot in for another 10 years. So by then the habit has changed. You're not just there because you're like, my guy, you're there for another reason. Conshizzy, we're going to have to end the conversation, but thank you so much for that today. It's been a pleasure.
I've enjoyed speaking with you guys, and I'm looking forward to, of course, have this conversation again.
Awesome.
And let me just tell everyone out there to be love-struck with everyone. Be compassionate, be empathetic, and look out for your neighbor and your friend.
Thank you
very much. Sir?
And you and Heno can sort out your beef Chinyamaji, yeah?
Wait, Chiki.
Oh, yeah. Heno's my brother. We can always
itamalizana hii lunch. Ananunua lunch na soda.
Yeah, Heno's my brother from day one. That shouldn't be a problem.
See you, my
dear. All right, thank you.
Bye.
All right.
Amazing.
Not only was that amazing, that's why I love having these conversations from a local perspective, because that was very local. And I think I'm urging 99% of people who are tuned into this show via www.vibesradio.co.ke, you're the privilege that we're speaking about. If you can afford data bundles, if your concern is data bundles, if it's not, how do I eat? How do I sleep? How do I make sure I have a roof over my head? Already you're in that